everyone. I have Emily Martinez here today. She is a new media artist working with machine learning, and I am very lucky to have her in the first cohort where we have learned a bunch together since February 2022. Emily, will you tell us about your background and your connection to the arts?
Hi, thank you for having me. I've been so looking forward to this. My background is I grew up in Miami. I'm from Cuba. My family is Cuban. I've been in Los Angeles the last 10 years, and I've been making art my whole life. It started when I was a child, and I studied art in high school, college. I studied visual arts, photography, and then I got a master's in digital arts and new media. And I currently have been working with machine learning and artificial intelligence, and also doing tech stuff like web-based front-end development, like web design, that sort of thing. I've also worked with video, internet art, making weird things with software, building like little bots that do fun things or poetic things. So yeah, that's some about me.
That's amazing. It's like art and tech and like all the worlds that it's bringing together. Very cool. And as the second question is, like, I always ask everyone in their journey as a hungry artist, which is basically, you know, a talented person, creative that has that hunger and determination and drive. And you are definitely that person. And I know I say it to a lot of people, just like, what's your journey been? But for you, I want to ask you, what's your journey as a hungry artist from the start of the mentoring program and then to now, from February to now? Like, what have you learned and like, how do you feel?
Oh, okay. Oh man, I was so ready to answer this just from like my life.
Oh, well, you know, we can do it that way. We can do it that way. And maybe
I
you
mean,
can
I
do a
could
short
lead
version.
into it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, perfect.
Because I feel like there's always, like I've just said, it's always been a part of my life. Like when I was little, I was like always drawing and playing music. It was like, those were the things. But for some reason, I ended up on like visual, like studying visual arts and not music. I mean, not for some reason. It was just, you know, like I went to public school and there was just a way that you were put on certain tracks. I ended up in a magnet program for visual arts, and then that kind of became the thing. So that was kind of the beginning, but I was always torn between how am I going to make a living and how am I going to keep pursuing this? And that's always been like this struggle where I'm, you know, like I still kept studying art, but then I'd be left, you know, I'd leave, I'd graduate, and suddenly I was like, okay, how am I going to pay bills? So I worked a lot of very random jobs. I had a job for 8 years as an inventory auditor, and that was really weird, but I liked it because it was the complete opposite skill set. It was something where like I could control my hours, and so I would do that and then like work on my art. When I went to graduate school, a similar thing happened, you know, like where I was in that cocoon where I can just make work and focus, and then I left and I was like, what do I do now? And that's when I started learning coding. I was like, okay, I'm gonna just learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and just go full on, because I know that with those skills, I can get work, and I just need a laptop and I can be anywhere. And like, that's just gonna open more doors. And it was also tools that I used in my art. So it just kind of worked, you know, in both senses. But it's always been, it still continues to this day to be this kind of thing where, you know, I'm able to focus like a little bit of time, or maybe I get a little residency or a little bit of funding, and I can do a project, and then I have to just go back to, you know, trying to make money. And there's always this kind of like push pull, or feeling like I'm spinning too many plates and like I'm not fully moving in like a direction. Like when I think about things like I want to, like I don't own a home or have any of those things, that I'm, you know, the older I get, the more I long to have just more security and stability. So it's every day it's still like the balancing balancing act.
Yeah. And like I was on
and I don't know why I don't stop.
Yeah,
like,
it's never going to stop.
Myself.
I think that's the thing, because it's a privilege to be able to do art and to create what you love to do. And for us to like keep doing that, it's like you have to figure out how to make a living. If that's not letting you make a living, then it's like finding those extra jobs and stuff. And I think the biggest challenge is just finding time in general, for me at least. And so I feel you. And then I think like when I say like hungry artists, what I also love the metaphor of is, we're always like figuring out what's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's like, and then afterwards, you're not just set, it's like you need to then figure out the next meal. And so even for us as artists, we're always looking for the next gig, the next job. And you can't just like get comfortable, because it's, a cutthroat industry, that it's like, if you're going to get lazy or just stop, then it's like, there's going to be somebody else that could do it as well. But I think we're that passionate about it. And that's why we're here. Yeah. And then, I didn't mean to throw the question off about saying like, what's your journey been from the mentory, but
but we can talk about that. I feel like it leads to that, where I heard about the program. And
how did you hear about it?
A friend emailed me
Nice.
and was like, hey, somebody, mutual friend sent me this. I thought you might be interested. So that's how I found out. I applied. I was like, okay, they have a little bit of funding. They have support. They have all this stuff. I had been already working on a project that I saw as like creating some kind of collection out of. And I was curious about blockchain and NFT. So I was like, okay, why not? Let me try this. This could be a really good just a good opportunity to to experiment with these things. But back to your question about like how do we survive, I was also just interested in like, could there be a different model for sustainability, where it's like, does this NFT blockchain thing have any legs for like building a community and being able to have a different model for sustaining that isn't the traditional like funding models for like a lot of artists, which for me, like the type of work I make isn't object based and isn't like gallery or like commercial work. So the way that I've been able to fund things are through like nonprofit like granting organizations, or places that will just get like project based spaces, that will like give me time or give me access to like a production budget. But they're kind of these one-off things. It's not like there's residual income coming in from a royalty or some big sale of a painting. Like that just doesn't doesn't exist. So I was like, maybe this NFT thing can be something. I don't know. And there's a project that I'm working on, which I know you're going to ask me about soon, but the idea for me was that I want to fundraise, use the NFT collection to fundraise for a different project.
Yeah. And I think with the NFT, I think we're all exploring that, but they do say you could set up these secondary sale royalties for artists. Like, and we've never had that with traditional art before. So if this is true, then I think hopefully, we will have that secondary kind of royalty coming in later after we do launch. So we could be hopeful for that. And the program, I think, in teaching us ways to launch our NFT projects, I think, I've learned a ton. So I'm curious to see where we will be in the next few months or the next year. So it's exciting. Yeah. And, thanks for collaborating for the Exquisite Collabs. I wanted to ask you about that because everybody who collaborated, they either made like a wing or maybe a wing and a leg. You actually gave me 4 options. You're the only one who gave me like 4 different options. And I thought it was so cool how you did that. And I have never used AI before. So like, I'm curious how you, like programmed it, how you came up with it and what you did. So I'm going to do a screen share and I would love for you to talk us through the 4 different ones that you submitted.
That I use, it's a machine learning model called VQ GAN plus CLIP. And GAN is a type of AI that generates images. And CLIP is a library that OpenAI, which is like a big company that does a bunch of AI stuff, developed, that I think it's like a huge database of like image language pairs. And the way that this model works is that you enter in text and it generates an image. There's like a very popular version of this now called DALL-E 2 in particular, that OpenAI released, that makes like super hyper realistic things. The thing I use is kind of like a hack, because when OpenAI developed DALL-E 1, they kind of teased it and took it away. And then, the internet, people being like hackers, the clip library was already available. So they were like, we're just going to make our own. So they took the clip library, they took this other GAN library, and they made the thing that I used, which you could find like code for on the internet. People share it. So basically I entered a prompt, and for like the first one, it was anarchist angel with wings made out of Kermit plushies.
So fun.
So that was the first one. The second one is angel with wings made of crystals. And then I also added two more, like what they refer to as modifier keywords, hyperreal and V-ray tracing. Because the model also knows, like based on all the images it was trained on, like it knows certain styles. So you could tell it, make it look like a 35mm film camera, or make it look like 8K, or make it look like it's in the style of a certain type of artist. So if you give it these other modifier keywords, make it reflective, make it out of flowers, it'll try to do that.
Very cool.
Oh, and I fed it an image to start with, because there's two ways you can work with this. You could just let it from scratch come up with whatever random thing it's going to generate, or you could give it what's called a seed image, which I took the little template you gave us of the angel, and I had to modify it in Photoshop because yours had all the boxes, and I was like, I have to get rid of the boxes and just give it kind of like the outline of the angel, so it looks like what is it called when the chalk outline? I was like, I'm giving it the chalk outline of the angel. And I did make like the background. I tried to give the background contrast from the angel too, because I was like, I need the AI to understand that these two things are very separate. And so I tried that a couple different ways too, because sometimes it was reading it too flat and wasn't really making wings very clear. Like it just was still too messy. It's still a little like chaotic, but it's like enough that I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. This is cool. There's enough differentiation that there's like, you could tell there are wings, especially on the third one, where the prompt is religious painting of an angel with wings. And that one, I was like, oh, that one's the most kind of like, it kept the shape.
Yeah.
And the fourth one, anarchist angel with wings made of pink fur. And then I added hyperreal and synthwave.
Yeah.
And it drew like an A. Did you see like the A for like on the chest? I was like, oh, it knows what anarchy is. That's fun.
I know. It's like really interesting, the 4 different options you gave. And then because we were doing the collaboration and I was doing the juxtaposition with Jessie from Stacculents, I kind of ended up picking the letter D, and we'll leave it for a surprise of how it looks. We're launching it on Tuesday, which is July 12th. So yeah, I love how it came out. I think it's super cool. And then we embedded music on it and all of that. So I'm excited for everybody to see that. So thanks for being part of that. I wanted to also ask you about NFTs and Web3, like as an artist and, as the person you are. I know we've kind of touched upon it, but like, what's the future of NFTs and Web3 look like to you?
What a big question.
I know.
Right now, I don't know. It's one of those things that like, I mean, right now the market's in a place where it's just like, wow, everything crashed, everything kind of, a lot of things imploded, which I actually think is a good thing. It's like, okay, there's a lot of just trash that got cleaned out. And I know the future is going to have a lot of still, there's going to be new pyramids and new hype cycles and lots of things that for me personally are just going to be there. I'm not going to be super interested in. I think what I'm interested in and what I hope to see more of is always going to be minority. But I want to see more things that are like run by artists, that are run by collectives, that don't center the technology, because that's, I think, part of what a lot of this stuff has done, that where I'm not interested, or I see it as like a failure. It becomes the pyramid scheme, or just it incentivizes something that I'm just not, I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in seeing more like, can we speculate together and like keep, capitalism going full force when there's so many things that are happening on this earth right now, like that need our attention and are tending to, and like it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I want to see more, like just more responsibility around like, the ecological concerns, like people really taking, accountability for like the carbon footprint and how the blockchain's gonna, like, which ones are actually gonna take that seriously and not just do offsets, but do something that's more legit. And then in just like when I think about things like DAOs, like that's something else where recently I just learned about this thing called discos, which is like an alternative to DAOs. And like the acronym, it stands for Distributive Cooperative Organizations. And like it was like it's based on like a P2P commons model where they're taking in like feminist economics as an alternative to like the DAO, which is just, you know, still coming from like the tech world where it's like corporation 2.0. And like this is coming more from like a long history of like cooperative organizing and sustainability and like, you know, how do we build something where we can help each other thrive and like exist without exploiting and extracting further. So if people are interested in that, I just learned about it and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Disco? I have to look into
that. Disco.coop.
.coop. Okay.
Yep.
Amazing.
It's a lot of like funding from like European orgs. So it's another thing too. I was thinking about like America and I was like, oh, right. America's not really, you know, I mean, there are co-ops here, but I feel like that there's funding and more kind of attention in like other parts of the world.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I just hope to see more of that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at Web3 NFT, you know, like just wanting to see it get better. And right now, even if we all don't know, it's a big question mark, but like knowing what we want to see, I think is important. And lastly, before you leave, I just want to ask you, what are you currently working on and where can everyone find you? I want to hear a little bit more about Queer AI and all the things you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to make this quick because I know we don't have a lot of time, but my journey with working with AI, I started a collaboration with a friend of mine, Ben Lurchin, and we trained a model on a corpus of queer theater. We made a chatbot out of it, and then 2 years ago, I used the same corpus to train a new model that's more sophisticated in some ways. And I've been using that to generate like short stories and poems and to make art using the same process that I use to make the piece for this collaboration. And I'm working on a collection now called Ultimate Fantasy. That's from a lot of these stories and images and texts. And that's going to be my NFT collection that, you know, I'm also soon. I don't know when, but maybe fall. And that one, every story starts with the phrase, "Let me begin by telling you my ultimate fantasy." And they're all like really wild and really different and super fun. I have a Twitter that I made that tweets like little excerpts from each story. Every day it tweets like one. And that Twitter handle is at AI Pleasures. And then my other Twitter is at Queer Machines. So if you follow either of those, yeah, you can keep up with my work. And for anyone on Instagram, it's at Queer AI.
Perfect. And then your website, it was somethingnothing.me, was it?
Somethingnothing.me. Yeah, that's my personal site. So that's kind of like the main hub if you want to dig deep into my past. And everything I've done, there's all kinds of weird other stuff in there too.
Yeah, but I feel like you build with purpose and everything like you talk about and you bring up even within the mentoring program, it's like with like a lot of research and purpose. So I really respect that. And I love, you know, what you're building and I can't wait to see, you know, your NFT project launch.
Thank you. Oh, and I should say, so the whole purpose of the launch and this collection is to raise funds for a new project, which is, it's called Unsupervised Pleasures. And I'm trying to, like doing all of this work, I've met so many people that are working with AI. Some are researchers, some are artists, but there's kind of like this hunger that people have for like these alternative ways of working with AI and like using different frameworks like queer methodologies or just like thinking about things like, you know, for when we started Queer AI, we were thinking about like gender and how I was looking at chatbots and a lot of the things are modeled after like the subservient fembot, and it's just not, you know, there's not a lot of other options.
Right.
So I partnered with a friend and collaborator, Sarah Siston, who's also doing a lot of research around like building an intersectional AI toolkit. And we want to try to form like a community or to activate a community around building more tools and being able to like put together like alternative data sets and just ways of like working with these models that are more intentional and that can help, you know, alleviate some of the problems with bias and like all the awful things that happen with like, you know, some of the bigger corporate models that we see out there.
Right. That's so important. Thank you so much, Emily.
Yeah.
I know we're running out of time, so I'm
Yeah,
going to
I
say
know.
goodbye, but I'll see you on Friday at the
For
Mintery.
sure.
And thanks so much for taking the time to
Oh,
talk.
thank you for having me.
Yay. Okay.
Okay.
Have a good day. Bye, Emily.